Well, for more on how tariffs will impact the beer industry in the U.S., I spoke with Jim McGreevy, President and Chief Executive Officer of the Beer Institute. And he began by explaining the overall effect he sees them having.
We estimate for beer, this is a $347 million tax. Tariffs are taxes in the end, and for beer, with 60% of our manufactured and sold beer coming in aluminum cans and aluminum bottles, this is a nearly $350 million tax.
So obviously this is a big shock to the system. So what are some of the ways that brewers are trying to either stave off or try and minimize the impact from these tariffs?
Well, you know, we're in the 6th week of the tariff now, the tariff regime now, and I think brewers around the country are still trying to figure out how to deal with the tariffs. Not only is it the 10% increase in the tariff, but it's also what we call the Midwest Premium, which is essentially a shipping and handling fee that aluminum producers charge our companies to get their metal to North America. And we have seen that shipping and handling fee, called the Midwest Premium, go up by 135% just since January. So brewers are trying to figure out how to deal with the cost. Aluminum is already the single biggest input cost for brewers, and this is just exacerbating that input cost.
Now, in general, we have seen a growth in some brewers switching to aluminium cans. With this tariff now, do we potentially see them reversing that trend?
Well, I think it's hard to know yet. As I said, just 6 weeks into this tariff regime now. But that's a real possibility, right? I mean, when you have brewers all over the country, more than 5,000 breweries in the United States now, more today than ever in the history of our country, and many of them moving to aluminum cans and aluminum bottles, if the cost is going to go up, they have to figure out something to do with that. And we're still trying to see whether we can make some changes to the tariff structure, whether the U.S. government will hear our issues around the Midwest Premium. So I think it's still early to know, but nearly $350 million tax on our brewers when we are in an already very competitive total beverage alcohol market, that really hurts.
And speaking of that competition, obviously you have your big brewers, and then you also have the rise of these craft brewers. Would you say that the tariff is more likely to hurt the bigger brewers than the smaller ones?
I think it's really hurting everyone. It is hurting, in particular, U.S.-based domestic beer brewers. And that's brewers who are large, brewers who are medium-sized, and brewers who are small. We were lucky enough to receive a excise tax break last year in December when the Congress passed a tax reform bill. And that excise tax relief helped all brewers. I was talking to a small brewer last week who said more than half of that excise tax relief is being taken up with higher aluminum costs. So, and I hear that from brewers all across the country. So this is really affecting everyone. You know, in the United States, beer accounts for roughly 2.2 million American jobs. More than 2 million Americans owe their livelihoods in one way or another to the production, distribution, and sale of beer. So this is a concern for everyone.
Now, we know that the Beer Institute, it represents America's brewers, beer importers, and supply chain partners. So it really is a very big chain of people that are involved here. What would they like to see happen in all this?
Well, I'm proud to say that the Beer Institute is one of the oldest trade associations in Washington, D.C. We've been around since 1862, and we've seen government work to the positive in beer and government work to the negative in beer. Unfortunately, it is working to the negative right now. What we'd like to see is some mitigation of the tariff overall, but we'd also like to see the U.S. government, the administration, or the Congress hear our problems with the Midwest Premium in particular. There are two components to the price of aluminum that beer brewers pay. The first is the base price, as set daily and transparently on the London Metals Exchange, and then there's the Midwest Premium, which is set by one company in secret with the input of aluminum producers and aluminum traders who benefit from seeing a high Midwest Premium. We have been talking to the folks in the administration, folks in Congress, about this Midwest Premium, and we are really looking towards our government to help us figure out a way to get more transparency in the pricing of that shipping and handling fee.
So for people who are sitting at home, they hear all this talk about tariffs, but it doesn't really hit home for them. Who would you say is really going to bear the brunt of all this? Why should they be paying attention to what's happening?
Well, right now the brewers are bearing the brunt. We are seeing the Midwest premium rise, as I said earlier, by 135% just in 5 months. We are seeing the cost of the base price of aluminum on the London Metals Exchange rise. We don't know how this will affect consumers in the end, but for a great American industry, this is really bad.